Hi everyone, Sharabin here, and this is part 4 of What If Larvitar Don't Add His Tea. So without further ado, let's dive in. Before we dive into this part, I want to go over all of our Pokemon and go over the changes they have done. Due to the fact that Ash wished to catch his newer Pokemon up to his older ones, Ash's team has definitely grown stronger than their canon counterpart, and while Pikachu, Swallow, Grovyle, Torkoal, and Glalie are just stronger, Corphish, Seviper, and Tyranitar have definitely grown stronger and even learned a couple of new moves. For example, Corphish still has Crab Hammer, Bubble Beam, and Vice Grip, but also have a new move in Dig. Next is Seviper. While it's retraining Poison Tail and Bite, it also learns Secret Power and Giga Drain. Tyranitar has gotten the most changes, with still learning Dig from when it was still Larvitar, while its hardened has evolved into the tougher Iron Defense, and even learning Rock Slide and Crunch upon evolution. But with this out of the way, let's dive into the story. Our journey continues onward with Ash and Brock going back to Kanto, while May and Meg returning to Petalburg City. There's a heartfelt reunion as our group finally split off, and back in Kanto, Ash and Brock also say goodbye to return to their own home. Things mostly go to Canada. However, we're being days later because of his competition in the Elite Four Challenge, and does not arrive at the same time as Scott, meaning he does not meet him in Viridian City or take on Agatha in a battle. With that, he returned to Pallet Town, where he meets his mother and reunites all of his Pokemon, and let his newer Pokemon get more accustomed to his older. We even getting a heartful reunion at Tyranitar Arena with his mother, as the mother can see that Tyranitar truly had grown. However, two notable changes take place here. One is that Misty is not there when Ash shows up, because her vacation day would have ended up, and she does not wish her sister to ruin the gym while she's away. At the same time, Scott decides to arrive in Palatine in person to personally invite Ash to take part in the Battle Frontier. Upon seeing how Ash took on 4 Elite Four members, only losing to Drain, he believed Ash had what it takes, and once he learned what a Battle Frontier is, Ash is more than on board. However, he does not embark on this journey on his own, because in the lab also appears May and Max. Max having a comedy Professor Birch that decide to visit, and May wishing to take part in the contest in Kanto. Eventually, they decide to once again travel together, with some surprises, with May even getting a Squirtle from Blizzard Oak, which is quite shy, as well as Ash deciding to leave some of his newer Pokemon at the lab, with those being Torkoal, Glalie, and Tyranitar, but to his surprise, he even gets joined by an old friend from Johto, Vampy. The following day, as the gang is about to embark, Brock surprises them and actually said that they are not on a journey without him. And with that, our group of trainers once again embarks on their journey. Tyranitar time at the lab mainly a start with him reuniting with the team of Johto Pokemon, since those are the ones he actually knew, but also getting some acquaintance with Ash's old Kanto Pokemon. However, the one Pokemon he's getting a good friendship with is none other than Bulbasaur. Seeing how Bulbasaur serves the ambassador of the ranch, Tyranitar actually accompanies Bulbasaur on his daily runs, and the two of them form an interesting partnership. While Bulbasaur is great with words, when it comes to Pokemon that has big pride, sometimes a bit of force is necessary. So that is what Tyranitar comes in, serving as the unblockable tank as it is, taking any attack the problem it causes it before striking back with force, making them listening to both it and Bulbasaur. The two of them serving both as a great way to keep track of the ranch, being both brain and brawn. On Ash's front, however, things doesn't really change with his Frontier battle for the most part. The battle with Nolan is still Charizard versus Articuno, with Charizard eventually able to win against Gerda, and still with Grovyle against Hariyama. However, with the amount of training Grovyle got in, is actually strong enough to win against Hariyama, only falling to Medicham, meaning Snorlax comes in and finishes it off. Next, against Tucker, he still using a combination of Corphish and Swallow against Arcanine and Swampert, and the two of them were able to win against the two, meaning Ash gets free of his symbol just like in canon. It is at this point that Vampy also evolves into Donphan, and Ash eventually has his next Frontier battle against Pike Queen Lucy. However, when Lucy sent in her Seviper, Ash decided to counter with his Seviper. The two Seviper then have a mirror match, both catching Poison Tail and Bind, while Lucy's Seviper uses a Flamethrower is good at distance. Seviper's Secret Power and Giga Drain help it when it's up close. However, with Giga Drain's able to drain health, that gives it just enough so he's able to outlet Lucy's Viper, meaning Melody comes in and Viper latches onto it using another Giga Drain to get some health back. When Lucy tries to have Melody use a Hydro Pump, Viper is able to jump into the water to avoid it before jumping back out and striking with a Secret Power. Melody is able to get away from it. However, For it cannot avoid a fall of Poison Tail, which strikes but also poisons Milotic. I believe now Survivor has it in the bag, but then Lucy caught on Facade will take down Survivor in a finishing blow. While Milotic is powerful, the poison slowly chips away at his health. When Atkinson in Dawnfen, it uses a roll like he's at a distance, so when Milotic is pretty much out of health, it runs in first headfirst with the roller as Lucy countered with Facade. The two moves collide in the middle of the stadium, but when it ends, Milotic gets fallen, meaning Ash gets his 4 Frontier symbol. Following this, just like in canon, Grovyle also evolved into Sceptile, going through a quick heartbreak where he cannot use any moves, but thanks to some encouragement from Spencer of the Battle Palace, Survivor is able to get his moves back in just in time for Ash's 5th Frontier battle. This match is pretty much exactly as like in canon, with them leading with Shifty and Sceptile, with Sceptile winning, then follow a match with Heracross and Venusaur, where Venusaur wins, then Ash going to Swallow, we take down Venusaur, followed by Kaleido, we take down Swallow, and then in the last match with Kaleido and Sceptile, Sceptile is able to learn Solar Beam to finish it off. Things at that point had gone well, and eventually Ash gets to the Battle Tower when he gets to take on Annabelle, and he decided to call Tyranitar back, and when it appears, it looks around seeing all of its friends and seeing how well they grow. Surprised seeing Sept and Thompson have evolved, but he's happy to see them again. And with that, the battle between Ash and Annabelle begins, with them both leading with Corfish and Alakazam getting cannon, with Alakazam taking the win. Ash then goes with Tyranitar, however, be able to tell her Pokemon what to do without actually saying anything gives Annabelle the advantage. However, Tyranitar just eyeing the thing, keep it healthy enough, so when it delivers a finishing crunch, it's able to take down Alakazam. Like its Metagross, and the two of them has a head-to-head clash, both striking with everything they have. But in the end, Annabelle is just too good, and Tyranitar eventually falls, meaning the only Pokemon left is Pikachu. However, Tyranitar done such a great job, so eventually Pikachu is able to take down Metagross by taking a couple of hits. With that, Annabelle is in our final Pokemon, Espeon. However, with Pikachu taking damage already, it's unfortunately not enough, and Espeon is to take out Pikachu, meaning Ash lost his first Frontier battle. However, Ash is determined to win, so he spent the following day training with all of his Pokemon, and eventually he was ready to take on Annabelle in a rematch. The matchup begins just like canon with Corfish and Alakazam, and the battle mostly goes the same like before, with Alakazam even able to confusing Corfish. However, with Ash's encouragement, as well as all his training has done to catch out Ash's more experienced Pokemon, it gives Corfish the push it needed to evolve into Crawdaunt. With that, it's not on confusion, and even Ali uses a new move, Knock Off. This actually knocks away Alakazam's boost, preventing it from stabilizing its psychic ability, allowing it then to land on Uppercut Crab Hammer, which takes down Alakazam. Next is Metagross, and Crawdaunt strikes with multiple knockoffs. However, Metagross' strength allows it to take it before finishing Crawdaunt off with an Hyper Beam. Next is Tyranitar, and using its power, it allows it to take any of its hits, and opposite from first time, when the does end, a Tyranitar who stands victorious. Next is Espeon again, and with Espeon's speed and the use of Sap Cannon, it's unfortunately enough to take down Tyranitar. However, with the effort he put in, Pikachu is able to come in and finish down Espeon with a Thunderbolt. Meaning at this point, Ash gotten 6 of his Frontier symbols, meaning he still have 1 left in order to complete the Battle Frontier. I decided to keep Tyranitar around for a bit, and it showed to help in various ways, such as when they can encounter the Oxide, Tyranitar's status as a Suran Legendary, as well as the Dark types, allows them to keep the Oxide at bay, made to eventually resolve the conflict. However, after May's final contest, seeing how they are close to Mount Silver, Ash approached the game with an idea of visiting Mount Silver as well as Tyranitar's home. The gang agrees to it, and with that, the gang travel towards Mount Silver, where they reach Ranger Mason again, where she's surprised seeing Tyranitar fully evolved now, where it's happy to see it did so well. So while watching over Tyranitar's home, as well as stopping Team Rocket from fleeing Pokemon there, the gang eventually continues onward to the final battle facility, the Battle Pyramid. However, this is where we get a shift, since they coming from Mount Silver and not Pewter City, this changes the route they take, so they do not stumble onto ruins, meaning Ash is not possessed by the spirit of the former king. So when Ash gets to the pyramid, he gets to wait for a bit, but eventually Brandon comes and Ash is allowed to take on his Frontier battle. Just like in canon, Brandon in Regirock, but since he's not possessed, Ash is able to use Sceptile, and knowing his Pokemon best, they're able to perform way better than the King of Atlantic did, since he only used raw power, but Ash used his Sceptile natural speed to keep at a distance while attacking with quick hit and run leaf blades. Regirock uses Lock Gun and Hyper Beam is difficult at first, however, Sceptile and Ash refuse to give up, however, and they are able to push through, but in the end, they are still not enough, and Regirock is able to take the win. Brandon compliments Ash on his performance, but said that he needs to train even harder if he's ever going to face him again. And with that, things goes just like they did in Canon, with May competing in the Candle Grand Festival, and Ash as well catching A-Pop. May's performance goes just like in Canon, and eventually, our game reaches Fennel Valley, where Ash will once again have a chance to take on Brandon. Just like in Canon, Brandon goes with Registeel, Ash uses Torkoal, and the two of them have a hit clash like in Canon, but even with Torkoal's new and Heat Wave, it's not enough, and Registeel is taking the win. So Ash decides to take some time and eventually reunite with some old friends. So with that, when Brandon returns, they once again take on their 4-on-4 battle. And things mostly just goes like they did in Canon, with the final matchup being Brandon's newly caught Reggie versus Pikachu. And after unleashing his recently learned Volt Tackle, is able to get the win, and Ash has officially conquered the Battle Frontier. Just in Canon, he's offered the chance to be a Frontier Brain. However, Ash declines this, saying that he still wishes to travel, and Brandon accepts this. At this point, things just like in Canon, then Ash and May has a final contest when they end up tying, and eventually everyone returns to their home. And when Ash gets to the lab, he once again runs into a rival Gary, who wishes to have a battle. The matchup is between Pikachu and Gary's newly evolved Electivire. However, with Pikachu being stronger than his Canon counterpart, is able to put it back far more effectively, and with the smoke clear, it actually ends up in a tie. Gary compliments Ash on his growth before Gary returns to the scenery again, without deciding that is where his next journey is gonna take him. Deciding to leave all of his Pokemon at the lab, he eventually embarked on his next journey towards Sinnoh, to new adventures and new battles to be had. And that will be all for today. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in part 5, as well as the final part. Bye!